Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I have a fun Easter card to share with you guys. So I started off with a piece of Strathmore Ready Cut watercolor paper. This is their cold press. It's 140-pound weight and it's pre-cut to 5x7. So I've got a piece of that out, and then I have my Tim Holtz Bird Crazy stamp set, which I've had for, I don't even want to know how long I've had it for and still hadn't used. So I chose this bird from the set and inked it up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I have the Crazy Things stamp set that has all the little images that you can use to coordinate with these guys, little balloons and different accessories that you can dress them up with, which are super fun. And there's this bunny ears stamp in the set. So I pulled that out. And I'm using my stamp positioner, which I haven't used in forever, but for an image like this, that's perfect. So I placed the stamp on an acrylic block, and then I inked up the stamp and then stamped it holding the edges against the stamp positioner, and then stamped it on this clear acrylic sheet that comes with the stamp positioner. And then that way I can figure out where exactly to stamp these ears, because even though the image is printed right on the back of the stamp, I'd rather be safe than sorry than waste a bunch of watercolor paper. So I used the stamp positioner so I can get the ears right where I wanted them. And then there was that little tiny gap, so I just grabbed my one of my pigment liner pens and just drew that tiny little spot in just to make sure it all connected. And then I just put this piece onto a hardboard. So put it on there, and in the end, really, I pretty much didn't need to do this, but I wasn't 100% sure how I was going to cut. Like, I knew I was going to watercolor the image, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do, because as always, I am flying by the seat of my pants, and I never really pre-do or work on anything. So I grabbed my Gansai Tambi watercolors, and I just mixed up some different colors on my palette, and I totally tilted the palette and mixed two of the colors. I ended up kind of mixing together the yellow and that blue. But I just pre-mixed some of the colors. I added white to them, and I'm matching the colors to the pattern paper I plan on using later. So that's why I went with like pastel-y colors. And I just started dropping them onto the bird. I was kind of thinking of how he would look as if he was getting completely covered in like Easter egg coloring or something. So I just started dropping in colors and kind of experimented just to see what was going to happen with them. I was pretty heavy-handed with it and just kind of was letting the colors do their thing. With the Gansai Tambi, if you are not familiar with them, they are very somewhat opaque watercolors. They're basically closer to a gouache, which I didn't even know was a thing because I am not an artist, and I'm not really familiar with those sorts of things, but it's almost like a cross between watercolor and acrylic paint. So they're very more opaque watercolors in a way. So you can see there where I was being like heavy-handed, like they were actually starting to obscure some of the detail of stamp. So when that happens, all I do is I squeeze all the water out of my brush, and especially with these silver brushes, this works really well, is you squeeze all the water between your fingers out of the brush, and then when you touch the brush to the watercolor again on the image, it soaks up a lot of that excess color. So that's what I did on the areas where it was starting to pool and cover up like his little wing and stuff. And then I just left that to air dry and went on to different areas of the image. So I filled in the center of the ears, and then I used the gray I'd created to do the edges of the ears. And I didn't let things dry as much as I should have between, so the gray kind of started to bleed a tiny little bit into the pink, but I just kind of went with it. It didn't need to be perfect, and yeah, I was just having fun. And with an image like this, I just find you can kind of be a little bit more messy with it. And plus, it was the whole idea of him getting like splattered with color. So I didn't want to be super perfect and clean with everything. So I added a little bit of darker area there into the ears, and then did the same thing. Squeezed some of the color or the water out of my brush and picked up a little bit of that black because it was starting to kind of bleed more into and obscure everything. And once I had all of that colored for his little beak, I just picked up the color directly from the watercolor pan in the Gansai Tambi palette. Before that, I did the ground, and I just used that same gray. In that area, I just pre-wet with clean water, just so the color would kind of flow, and then made a little bit of a darker gray, and applied that as well, and then just let that sit and air dry. And then, yeah, like I said, for his beak, I picked up a little bit of the lighter orange directly from the watercolor pan, and then there was a little bit of a darker orange in the set, so I picked that up as well. Kind of added that and then did the same thing, squeezed the water out of my brush and then picked up a little bit of it so it wasn't pooling too much on the beak and just kind of obscuring any of the detail. And then I picked up, there's like kind of a darker turquoise color and just did his eyes with that. I've been raving about these silver brushes in the last video or two. Really like them. I used my size 4 brush for this image and I did it for everything. So once everything was pretty much dry, I just took that stamp and I didn't re-ink it. I just stamped it onto this scrap of Post-it tape that I've got and then trimmed out just the eyes because I wanted to splatter the image. And I didn't want the splatters to get all over the eyes. Just, I wouldn't have minded if there was a couple, but I didn't want it to end up being coated. So I thought it'd be better to just mask those off. So I did that and then just picked up the watercolors with a brush and then flicked the brush against my hand and my fingers to create all these splatters. And this is where you see at the end, when you see these all dry, you can see how opaque they really are. Like when you apply them thickly like this, they're actually quite opaque. And yeah, splattered everything, let it dry, which took a fair bit because some of those splatters were quite large. And then I removed the little masks I'd put over the eyes, and then I die cut it with one of the dies from the My Favorite Things Inside and Out Stitched Rectangle Stacks Dynamics, which you can see in the bottom corner there. And then the pattern paper I'm using is from Authentique. I showed it in the recent haul video. It's from their springtime collection, and that's what inspired the colors for this card. So I trimmed down the bunny pattern paper to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And while I had my paper trimmer out, I just scored my card base, which was heavyweight white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it at 5 1/2. And then I grabbed a couple scraps of pattern paper from the pack, and I had trimmed them down into different sizes of rectangles. And then I grabbed just a piece of green cardstock that was kind of similar to the green color in the pattern paper. I just thought that set off the little pattern paper nicely. And then I just used my scissors there to cut little flag ends on these 3 little pieces. And once I was happy with them, I'm going to adhere them to the little watercolor panel there with my ATG adhesive. And then decided with this green cardstock, I kind of wanted it to be behind. So I was able to kind of shimmy it in there behind that little plaid pattern paper because I'd already adhered that. So got those 3 adhered where I wanted. And then I just turned over that piece and trimmed off the excess with my scissors. And then as a final little embellishment, I have some AmyR's ribbon here. My all-time favorite, and obviously because I have full rolls of it, is the sheer polka dot ribbon. So I tied it in a bow, and then I used my Tim Holtz tiny attacher, my little mini stapler here, to attach the bow to this little watercolor panel, which I have not used my tiny attacher in forever, but I just love it. It's so cute. So I use that tiny little staple just to staple the bow right on there. I just thought it was a cute little touch. And then I attached this to the pattern paper. I used some foam tape for that. And then I adhered this watercolor panel that's on the pattern paper to the card base with my same ATG adhesive. So got that all adhered, and then I'm going to go on and finish the inside of the card. So I've got sentiments from the Crazy Talk stamp set, which again coordinates with the Crazy Birds. There's all these great little hand-drawn sentiments for this. So there's the Hippity Hoppity and Happy Easter stamp, which of course is perfect. So pulled those out, and then I just used my grid paper here to line them both up to get them both on the same block at the same time. And then I cleaned off the bird and the ear stamp really well. And I'm using My Favorite Things snow cone ink, and I just stamped it off once onto the grid paper again just to make sure I had got it really clean and there wasn't any black ink left on it. So, and then inked it up again with the snow cone ink and stamped that onto the inside of the card. And then I hadn't cleaned off the stamp positioner acrylic piece with that had the original stamped image on there. So I hadn't cleaned it off, but I cleaned off the stamp, so it was still clean. And I was able to use the positioner to line up that stamp a second time so I can get the ears stamped perfectly, and I'd inked it up with the same snow cone ink. And then finally inked up the sentiment and stamped that again on the grid paper as well, just to make sure it was stamping evenly and everything, and then stamped that on the inside of the card, and that finished off this fun little card. So as always, there will be links below the video to my blog post, links to the supplies used, all that fun stuff. So if any of that interests you, check out the description box below the video. And thank you all so much for watching and thumbs upping and subscribing to my videos, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.